This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We, as I always say, have a very important show, and I have a different take on what's been going on in this country as of today. Of course, we'll discuss new events at Freedom Watch and in my private practice for our various clients who are trying to bring about justice, not just get documents, but bringing hard-hitting lawsuits and what we're doing in that regard. But I want to start with Trump's overreaction to the massacres both in Ohio and in Texas. And these were terrible events. They're tragedies. They're minor events in no respect. I mean, there are major events. Let's not underestimate what this means. The country is being pulled apart at the seams. We are on the verge of a civil war between right and left. We're on the verge of a civil war between radicals of all stripes, and the country is just about ready to explode. Now, I believe, frankly, that this entire matter began in terms of dividing the country during the Obama administration. John Voight was right this week. Sure, there's still racism in this country. There's racism towards blacks. There's racism towards Christians. There's racism towards Jews. There's racism generally. But the country was going along fairly well until President Barack Obama, to use the term loosely, became our commander-in-chief. It started with Trayvon Martin. It went to Ferguson. It divided the country. It started with getting radical blacks all worked up, thinking that they were not being treated equally. It's now spread to other groups. And anytime you question anything these days, you're a racist. We have reparations on the horizon, not just with regard to African Americans, blacks, but to everybody. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. The country is coming unglued. So we have these tragedies. And these tragedies, a lot of them are perpetrated by the youth in this country who have not been brought up in the right way. We need to instill Judeo-Christian values into our youth. We need to teach them right and wrong. We need to teach them to stay off the internet with regard to vicious and violent video games. This is all the case. This is how you solve the problem. The problem is not to be solved cosmetically through greater gun control or having the social media companies spy more on the American people. They already have the same tools as the National Security Agency and the CIA and the FBI. How do you think these agencies got these mass spying and surveillance tools? And then trying to pick out people who are mentally ill. Now, here's the problem here. No one is against gun checks, background checks. Okay, we have background checks today. No one is against keeping guns out of the hands of people who are irresponsible, people who are crazy. And no one is against in any way curtailing the gun and other violence that we have in our country. But the president overreacted in a way similar to the way George W. Bush overreacted after 9/11. What happened then? We had unbridled mass surveillance of the American people, which got even worse under Obama. Mass surveillance for people who weren't committing any crime or in the act of committing any crime, people who weren't communicating with terrorists, but hundreds of millions of Americans were surveilled. And that can be abused. And I went into court on behalf of myself and two clients, private investigators and another client, family of victim. They were the survivors of Extortion 17, the Strange family. And we got injunctions. We got injunctions to stop the mass surveillance. That gave rise to the USA Freedom Act, which, of course, we know the intelligence agencies are in all likelihood still violating. But this was the result of an overreaction to 9/11. Yeah, sure, surveil terrorists. Sure, surveil criminals, but not the entire American people. And then, of course, we learned that the social media companies, they have the same tools as the NSA, the CIA, and the FBI. And, of course, we also know that there are crazy people out there. So Trump, who overreacted, and I love the president, but he's got to be called out on this. He was trying to placate the left, who was calling him a racist. I understand why he feels that way, why he has to overreact. But the answer is not to give unbridled power to the social media companies, Google, YouTube, Apple, the rest of them, to spy on the American people and to tell our government, our so-called government, who is mentally competent and who is mentally ill. Because that is a dangerous recipe for going into what happened in the Soviet Union, in the former Soviet Union and other authoritarian regimes. Is the government going to determine who's crazy and then have people committed because they're political rivals or they don't agree with their political views? We already know that Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram discriminate against conservatives and people of faith. With the increasing power of social media to try to determine and uncover if people are crazy, will that be used to lock these people up, to put them in insane asylums? This all sounds fantastic, but this is what was predicted by George Orwell's 1984 and other books, Atlas Shrugged and others, and it's coming to pass right now. So the president needs to pull back from that. You need to let him know not to overreact, to stay calm, to stay cool. We support him. We believe in him. He needs to not hang around bad people like he has in the past. I got to tell you, he's got to get better people in with him. But we do believe in him. And this is what's important about this week. Now, one of the other things I want you to understand, because the president's still under siege, the Democrats are planning to impeach him. Just wait till after the summer. They're going to start those impeachment proceedings. And impeachment proceedings do work for political purposes. They should go for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. During the Clinton years, Bob Barr and I, who was a congressman, Bob Barr, I was running Judicial Watch, we were instrumental in starting impeachment against Clinton. We didn't do that for political purposes. We did it because he committed over 40 scandals, and Monica Lewinsky was the least of it. But that did have the effect of weakening the Clinton-Gore administration, such that George W. Bush, a not terribly bright, not terribly up-to-date, or frankly capable of being president, got elected over Gore. Now, thank God he was elected over Gore, because Gore's so dishonest. That was another problem. But it did work, and we didn't do it for that reason. The Republicans tried to use it for that reason, and that's why they were only interested in impeaching Clinton over Monica Lewinsky. They didn't want to remove Clinton. They just wanted to weaken him and thereby weaken Gore. They didn't want Clinton to actually be impeached and convicted, because if they did that, Gore would have been made president. He would have been an incumbent president, and he could have won quite easily over Bush at that point, because incumbent presidents have a tremendous amount of power. So this is what you have to keep in mind. Now, this week, we also had information that there have been 302 reports that came out with regard to Bruce Ohr. My former group, Judicial Watch, which I founded and I conceived of, got these documents. Well, it's good to get documents, but let's understand in context what's happening. And I've said this many, many times. Documents are not going to bring about justice. We already have an example just about a week and a half ago of Attorney General Bill Barr not indicting Comey over leaks of classified information, memos that he wrote about confidential conversations under executive privilege with President Donald Trump. It's Washington, D.C. The elites are not going to take out other elites, whether the Democrat or Republican. I've always said it's the National League and it's the American League. They're all part of the same league. They protect each other. So I want the American people to get focused on things that actually will bring about justice. Tom Fitton's documents are great. They get them on Fox News. They get them on Hannity. It's a reality show, raises a lot of money for Judicial Watch. It's out there. But what do you do with the documents when it's out there? Like I've said many times, hang them on your wall with pictures of yourself in tight shirts? No, you have to bring about justice. And that's why at Freedom Watch we are doing what we're doing, whether it's representing real clients, not just filing Freedom of Information Act requests, but people like Sheriff Joe Arpaio, people like Judge Roy Moore, people like Laura Loomer, who's running for Congress now. In my personal capacity, I endorsed her last week on this show. People like the families of Extortion 17 to get justice for the military selling them out and them being sacrificed for the alleged assassination of bin Laden. I can go on and on and on. But this is where you need to support Freedom Watch and go to freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause. Documents are great. Okay, great. Let's write a book. Let's talk about it in history. I'm going to talk about Bruce Orr when we come back from the break, because this is not new what this guy has done. But now we need real justice. And at Freedom Watch, we do today what I used to do at Judicial Watch. I'm trying to get that point across because we need to get bigger. We need to get more powerful. We're the mouse that roared. So I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause, tax-deductible contributions. We need to hire more lawyers, paralegals, everyone, because we don't have a Justice Department. We got documents, but we don't have a Justice Department. We've got a Judicial Watch that does mostly documents, but they don't have any real trial lawyers over there. I'm a trial lawyer of 42 years. I need the support at Freedom Watch. I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. It's very important that you listen carefully because the Bruce Orr story goes way back, and you need to understand exactly what's going on.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Now let's talk about the Bruce Orr story, and let's go all the way back. When I was running Judicial Watch, and he's been on this show, we represented an individual by the name of Peter Paul. Peter Paul put on the Hollywood tribute to Bill Clinton. This was to raise money for Hillary Clinton's 1992 New York Senate campaign. Nearly $2 million was raised of hard money contributions. Those were illegal because the hard money contributions, that's money that goes directly to try to elect a candidate. The maximum limit, generally speaking, was $2,000 at that time, not $2 million. Peter had canceled checks. He had photographs. He had thank you notes from the Clintons, acknowledging that these were hard money contributions to help Hillary get elected in New York State. I went to the Justice Department with Peter Paul. He took a risk. Peter Paul's a hero. And we sought to get him immunity. We sought to have him testify as to what was going on with the Clintons. But rather than indicting the Clintons, who wound up getting indicted? Peter Paul. He did 10 years in prison. When I left Judicial Watch to run for the U.S. Senate, I left that case in the hands of Tom Fitton and others at Judicial Watch. They abandoned him. He wound up doing 10 years in prison. And this was a bone of contention at the time. So this is what I want you to understand in the context of Bruce Orr, because when I went to the Justice Department, when I was at Judicial Watch, before I left to run for the U.S. Senate, I went to the Attorney General, John Ashcroft, and the head of the criminal division, Michael Chertoff. And I said, we need your help here. Peter Paul has the goods on the Clintons. And just like Attorney General Bill Barr has the goods on Comey's, McCabe, Strzok, Rosenstein, the intelligence jars, Brennan and Clapper, Obama and Clinton, we had all the goods then. But it was covered up even by the Bush administration. And who was assigned to investigate? Bruce Orr. He was the head of the crime task force. And I went down with Bruce Orr's people to Brazil on a number of occasions. We debriefed Peter Paul because at the time that he was indicted, he was in Brazil. He was arrested in Brazil. Our Justice Department was trying to extradite him back to the United States. And Peter gave a number of interviews where he implicated the Clintons in crimes. Now, fast forward, we find out exactly why Bruce Orr covered everything up with the Clintons, because he's a Clinton advocate. 97% of the lawyers at the Justice Department either voted for the Clintons or the Obamas or contributed monies or both. That's what we've got at our Justice Department. And that's why you need a Freedom Watch, because the Justice Department is so co-opted. Even the Attorney General Barr, he has limited authority over there. He doesn't call the shots in all matters. That helps explain why the Bundys are still being attempted to be prosecuted. Their indictment was dismissed. But it was the Trump Justice Department which allowed for an appeal, because this is part of the Washington Club. And this is why Fitton and Judicial Watch don't want to talk about Bruce Orr, because I was in control of that matter for Peter Paul at the time, and they abandoned him. They don't want to talk about that because they never want to give me any oxygen, because Fitton goes around trying to give the impression that he was the founder of Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch just had his 25th anniversary, a birthday cake out on the internet. No mention is made. He's always felt competitive with me because he's not a lawyer. So when I left, he went to getting transparency in government and getting documents. And they do well at that. But the problem is that's not enough. We need hard-hitting lawsuits. We need citizens' grand juries, which you've seen what I've done. We've already indicted Robert Mueller. We're going to indict more in the fall. Bob Barr is going to join me in that endeavor. The Dream Team is going to be coming back together again. And that is why I'm giving you this clarion call each week, because Bruce Orr is part of a bigger story. He's part of a Justice Department that is no longer the Department of Justice of the American people. And that is why you must support Freedom Watch. It's why you must support what we're doing there. It's why you must go to CliveandBundyDefenseFund.org and contribute to his defense. CourseLegalDefenseFund.com, contribute to his defense, because I'm in the trenches with real clients, both at Freedom Watch and in my private capacity. Do not be mistaken about Fox News. Fox News wants ratings. They love the documents. And they sell the false narrative that something's going to happen out of our Justice Department, but it's not. So I'll be right back with the next segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
You know, I've told you this story many times. I'm kind of waxing nostalgic today about why I started Judicial Watch back in 1994. I started it because I had seen that the legal system had grown very corrupt. I had experienced judges throughout the country on behalf of my clients that ruled not on the merits, but they ruled on the basis of politics or whether they liked your race, religion, color, creed, or whatever. I'm, in effect, a civil rights lawyer in many ways. I'm a conservative. I'm a proud conservative. I'm a proud Christian. I'm a Jewish Christian. I love my heritage of being Jewish, but I'm Christian through and through. And I believe that the Ten Commandments and our system of justice has to be enforced. Our Ten Commandments is embodied in our Constitution. It's embodied in our laws generally, whether they're statutory laws or whether they're laws under the common law. That's one reason why I'm so close to Chief Justice Roy Moore, because he's someone who believes the same thing. His foundation for moral law. He's now running for the U.S. Senate to try to instill Judeo-Christian values. But I saw that these judges strayed from these Judeo-Christian values. You know, in the book of Isaiah, in the Old Testament, which predicts the coming of Jesus Christ, our Savior, it says that the faithful city has become the tarnished city. And God calls upon the counselors and the judges, the lawyers and the judges, to restore the faithful city from the tarnished city. You had people in the temples, money changers, a lot of corruption. This happens in every society. It needs to be renewed. And God sent Jesus Christ to us to restore that faithful city from the tarnished city. But he also wanted us to do it for ourselves and to follow the ways of Jesus Christ and to follow the ways of the Father. And so when I saw this injustice in the courts for a number of clients, and it even was fallen upon me, I had judges calling me all kinds of names, anti-Semitic names, like Mr. Schmuckler, a judge in the Central District of California, Judge William D. Keller. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I was representing foreign businessmen from Taiwan, a U.S. importer who was Jewish, a retailer who was gay, and this judge was making bigoted remarks about all of them. And I said to myself after that trial, because he stood me up and he tried me because I stood up to him, he fined me $20,000. You know, this is not the first time that I've stood up to judges or stood up to bar associations or stood up to anybody. I do what I think's right, and I believe, and Jesus has come to me on at least 2 occasions in my life, and he said, Larry, you're working for me. These are thoughts that I've gotten. You do what you think is right. I will be there for you. And I hope that you'll feel the same way. So I've taken these strong stands, and I started Judicial Watch, and I started it to watch judges initially, because we need the best and the brightest on the bench. And then I used the judges, some really good judges like Royce Lamberth in Washington, D.C., and Stanley Sporkin, and Judge Saul in Tallahassee, Florida, because in my lifetime I've met maybe 5 judges, frankly, who are courageous enough to take action that needs to be taken. But that was the reason for Judicial Watch. And of course, we use the judges to watch the other 2 branches of government and to bring cases, to bring about justice. But we need to overhaul the entire judiciary because we don't have the best and brightest on the bench. We've got some, but not many. Most of them in the federal system, they're all in the federal system picked through politics. It's how much money a law firm or a labor union or other special interest donates to a senator or the president to get their guy on the bench. And, you just can't have that because then these judges feel like they're beholden to the special interest that got them their jobs. Now, we currently have in the federal bench an overwhelming number of Obama and Clinton appointees. And that helps explain why the president and others are nearly checkmated every step of the way. And this is something that needs to be changed. And I've suggested a 5-part program. Number 1, and this may require a constitutional amendment, these judges should not be there for life. They should have 2 renewable 5-year terms, renewable for good behavior. They should be chosen on the basis of merit. They should not be chosen on the basis of politics. Before you qualify to be a federal judge, you should have to go to judge school to learn how to analyze an issue, to learn how to not just mete out justice, but the appearance of justice. They should be insured. This is one viable area where maybe the federal government is worthwhile spending some money, because when judges make bad decisions, if you're not rich enough to take an appeal, it's all over. We need to have arbitrators compensate people for judges who make grossly negligent or intentionally wrong decisions for the wrong reasons, not on the basis of the merits. And of course, I do think that they need to be psychologically tested as well, because many of them are just not mentally capable of meting out justice. It's a scary thing in our federal system. Now, in the beginning, when I first started Judicial Watch, and even before, I thought maybe it's good that we appoint judges because at least they're insulated from the whims of politics. But, I've come to a different opinion. This week I was in Florida. I am in Florida. It's where I'm from. And I had a number of cases in front of state court judges. Not only in Florida do judges make decisions at the state level much quicker, because you go into a hearing, you get to talk to the judge, and he's got a very big docket. He's got to move the cases along. That's good, because in the federal system, these judges are very, very slow. Justice delayed is justice denied. And if they don't like your case, they'll sit on it for years, hoping that it'll go away, or you'll die, or the litigant will die. I'm not joking. I'm actually telling you the truth. But in the Florida state court system, you go into a hearing and the judge will make a decision on the spot. And maybe it's rough justice, but the judges generally have enough humility that you can go back if they made a mistake and ask them to reconsider. Federal judges, they think they're gods. They rarely, if ever, change their mind on anything and basically tell you to get lost. Now, of course, in state court in Florida, judges are elected. And in most states, they're elected. Now, if the judge is a terrible judge, or if he's meting out injustice, at least you can vote against him and get him off the bench and have the turnover. So I want you to understand that the state court isn't perfect either, but it's certainly better than the federal court. But this is why the American people, because we have drawn some good judges over time, not many, who have taken courageous stands, who have enjoined the National Security Agency. In the case of Judge Royce Lamberth, who held the Clintons to account. Of course, the Justice Department did nothing after we exposed these things. But we do need the best and brightest on the bench, because judges, in theory, are our most important public servants. They protect us from the tyranny of the other two branches of government, because without them, we're left defenseless. And that's why our founders put into effect a system of checks and balances, where federal judges could sit over the actions of the other two branches of government. And if those other two branches act in an unconstitutional way, they could remedy the conduct. Again, unconstitutional way, not just because a judge decides it's wrong or because he doesn't like the politics of what's going on in a particular matter to take action. That is not what a judge is to do. The judge is to enforce the law. So that's why, given the dearth, the lack of a lot of judges who will enforce the law, why we've turned to citizens' grand juries. And as I've said before, citizens' grand juries are our constitutional right. Justice Antonin Scalia, may his soul rest in peace, as I've said as well before, but I want you to understand this. In a case, United States versus Williams, said the grand jury belonged to the American people, not to the other three branches of government. And why was that? Why did our framers and founders want that to be so? Because they knew that someday we would arrive at the precipice that we're now arriving at right now, where the country's coming unglued, where both political parties, the establishments, are corrupt, where they're stuffing money into their own pockets like the money changers in the temples of Jerusalem during the days of Jesus Christ and before and after. And, of course, Jesus is still alive. He'll be back. He's still with us. He's still with me. I hope he's still with you. And so is the Father. But they knew this was going to happen. And they knew that someday the American people were going to have to rise up. Jefferson said, our greatest founding father and greatest president, in my opinion, he said, we were going to have a revolution every other generation. He said we'd even have to spill blood to bring the country back to the original vision of our founding fathers. I'm not advocating that. I don't want to see violence. I don't want to see people dying in the streets or even being wounded. But I will tell you this, is that we need to use our God-given constitutional rights to start meting out justice. And that is why a few months ago, we met with our citizens' grand jury. We indicted Robert Mueller for trying to coerce Jerry Corsi into lying. Otherwise, he'd be put away for the rest of his life, for leaking grand jury information, for unconstitutional surveillance. We're going to be trying Robert Mueller in the fall. And we're going after the others as well. We're going after Bruce Orr. You see, it's more than just documents. You know, Tom Fitton, hang the documents on your wall with the pictures of yourself in tight shirts, which we see all over the internet. I hope you ask him why he does that. It's very, very strange. But I want you to understand that we have a job to do. We have to go after the Rod Rosensteins. We have to go over the McCabe's, the Strzok's. By the way, these characters just sued the FBI for being fired this week. Unbelievable. They should have been more than fired. They should have been indicted and put away for the rest of their lives. We have to go after Comey We have to go after Brennan and Clapper and all of them. And we will do that. Ilham Omar, who has committed immigration fraud and other crimes. Others out there, election fraud of Rashida Tlaib, these two Muslim congressmen that are vehemently anti-Semitic. That in Tlaib's case, she says the Holocaust gives her a calming feeling. With regard to Omar, it's the Benjamins. It's a Jewish conspiracy against her and everybody else. It's no Jewish conspiracy. What it is a conspiracy of evil people in Washington, D.C., who are representing themselves but not the American people. And sitting on top of that is an inner Justice Department. And that is why, to go full circle, President Trump's ideas, it was a reaction. They're not good ideas, and we need to let him know that. Yes, we need a Second Amendment to defend ourselves, not to hurt anybody. People should not be curtailed unnecessarily in the right to bear arms. We don't need Google, YouTube, Facebook, the rest of them spying on all of us, even more than they spy on us today. They know where you are at every moment. And we don't need them to be giving information to the federal government to use against us to declare us mentally insane so we can be taken away if the government does not believe that our political views are something that should be allowed to be expressed in society. This is dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. And while it may not happen under President Trump, think about who the next president could be. Could it be a Cory Booker? Could it be a Kamala Harris? Could it be crazy Buttigieg in Indiana? Could it be Beto O'Rourke, who frankly, I mean, the guy's the dumbest white guy running for president. Before it was Swalwell. Now he's taken the lead. I mean, the guy looks retarded. Look at his hand movements. I mean, look at what he could do, calling everybody a racist, calling Trump a racist, foaming at the mouth. Do you want these people to have power? And there was a very good chance, and I pray to God that it doesn't happen. I don't advocate who to vote for, as head of Freedom Watch, but in my personal capacity, I certainly can. But there's a very good chance that the president will not be reelected because the demographics of this country are changing by the minute. That's the reason they want all these illegal immigrants to come across the border. They want them to vote for the Democrats, not for the Republicans. That's why they're demonizing Trump. They're demonizing Republicans. They're demonizing conservatives, people of faith, if you just want to have immigration laws that work. And this is what we risk. So coming full circle, this is why we should not overreact to these massacres. Yes, the best thing we can be doing is teaching our kids and people Judeo-Christian values and ethics, that you don't kill people, that this is not what needs to be done. It's going to take a long time to turn it. But in the meantime, we need our Second Amendment rights to defend ourselves against these maniacs. Now, I'm going to be back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I know that I'm rambling a bit today, but I'm very, very emotional. And I want you to share this radio show with all of your friends. I'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back with the verdict, fellow patriots, friends, supporters. In the next week, I'm going to be filing an appellate brief for Cliven Bundy. This will, in fact, involve his sons, who were also indicted, others as well, who came to Bunkerville to peacefully protest the heavy-handedness of the Bureau of Land Management and others in our federal government that were trying to take the Bundys' land away from him. It was Harry Reid, that evil senator, and his son, that it was reportedly trying to sell this to Chinese environmental interests, obviously to try to get kickbacks. This is what usually happens. But the Bundys were indicted. They stood up for themselves. Cliven's sister Margaret was assaulted and thrown to the ground. His sons were tased. Their dogs were viciously kicked. Their cattle was murdered by BLM agents and other agents, mercenaries that were brought to the land, buried in secret mass graves to destroy his livelihood. Already hundreds of ranchers have been driven out of business by the Bureau of Land Management based on phony environmental policies that were to protect, allegedly, the desert tortoise. You know, there's an extreme amount of desert tortoises in Nevada. They actually have to euthanize them. They have desert tortoise farms. So Cliven stood up to this tyranny. And it was the first time in modern American history that people took on a lawless, tyrannical government and won. He fought the law, unquote, quote, and won. The West was won again. But Obama could not allow that to happen. And his attorney generals had the Bundys indicted. And then during the trial, which I participated in, it came to pass that government agencies lied to the court. They lied to the jury. A whistleblower came forward that talked about having a kill list on the heads of the Bundys, targets on walls of BLM, mocking the Bundys' faith, calling them retards and subhuman and things like that. And God intervened. The Heavenly Father intervened. And lo and behold, a judge that had been chosen by Harry Reid and appointed by Barack Obama, Gloria Navarro, was forced to dismiss the supersedious indictment against the Bundys. And after 2 years of being in prison without bail, they were finally let free. And when Cliven came out that day, I was with him. He looked at the sky and he thanked the Heavenly Father. And this was a miracle. Well, what happens after that? The Trump Justice Department allows the U.S. Attorney in Nevada to take an appeal. Why would you ever do that? You see, President Trump, he doesn't even know what's happening. The Attorney General, he's not in charge. And this is another lesson as to why you need Larry Klayman and why you need Freedom Watch. And I want people to join me. I want people to contact me. I want lawyers throughout the country to get in touch with Freedom Watch and me. We need a citizens' army. We need to fight back with citizens' grand juries, hard-hitting cases. We got enough documents to put all these criminals away. We don't need any more for Bruce Orr or anybody else. We need to do it for ourselves, and that's the motto. And Jerry Corsi, who stuck his neck out, who said, I'd rather do life imprisonment than to lie and implicate the president in crimes in the Russian collusion investigation of Robert Mueller. He stuck his neck out, and he won too, just like the Bundys. These are heroes. Chief Justice Roy Moore, he did the same thing, trying to teach the people that the Ten Commandments is the way, and he paid a price for that. Laura Loomer paid a price for that. One of my other clients, we've sued Facebook for removing her from social media. They held her out to dry, and now they've, in effect, created a fatwa against her by inciting violence against her. I amended the complaint this week. These people need your support, so go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause. Go to my private clients, the defense funds, and contribute to what they're doing. Because we, the American people, need to rise up. We cannot rely on our government. Our government is not in our camp, no more than it was in 1776 under King George III. We must do it peacefully, we must do it legally, and we must do it under the grace of God and look for his guidance. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Join our cause. I want you to share this radio show with all of your friends, fellow patriots. I want you to get it out. Radio America lets me say the truth, and the truth needs to be told. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, God bless you, God bless your family, God bless America, and God save America.